Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: business owners in a Ukrainian frontline city adapt even as a missile can come at any moment. Russia turns to prisoners to feed its war machine. Biden keeps Australia's dinner low-key at a moment of global turmoil. Before and after satellite images show destruction in Gaza. EU leaders set to back humanitarian pauses in Gaza. Business owners in a Ukrainian frontline city adapt even as a missile can come at any moment. Associated Press. Business owners in Kramatorsk, a city in eastern Ukraine, have reopened their doors despite the risks posed by the ongoing conflict. The city council estimates there are now 50 restaurants and 228 shops open in Kramatorsk, 3 times the number open at the same time last year. Many of these businesses had previously closed in the early days of the war and have since reopened. The city has adapted to the war, with the economy now catering largely to soldiers, journalists, and aid workers. However, the risks to business owners remain high, as demonstrated by the destruction of a pizzeria last year. Russia turns to prisoners to feed its war machine. BBC. The Russian Defense Ministry has reportedly started recruiting prisoners to fight in Ukraine, taking over from the Wagner mercenary group that previously used this practice. These army units, known as Storm Z, are treated as expendable forces and are often thrown into battle with little regard for their lives. There are also indications that members of other army units can be sent to Storm Z as punishment for violations. The Defense Ministry has not confirmed or denied recruiting convicts, but there are numerous indications of inmates being sent to Storm Z units. Biden keeps Australia's dinner low-key at a moment of global turmoil. New York Times. President Biden hosted a state dinner on the South Lawn for the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, despite a number of crises, including the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The dinner was held to express a show of nuclear-powered military force to the world. However, the performance by the B-52s was cancelled due to the ongoing crises. Before and after satellite images show destruction in Gaza. CNN. New satellite images released by Maxar show significant damage to sites across Gaza as Israel continues its airstrikes in response to cross-border raids by Hamas. There are fears that the crisis could escalate further. EU leaders set to back humanitarian pauses in Gaza. BBC. EU leaders are meeting in Brussels to discuss the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The EU has struggled to project a united front on the issue, with member states holding differing views. Some countries, including Germany, Austria, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, have expressed support for Israel, while Spain and Ireland are more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. The EU's response to the conflict has been criticized for being confusing and lacking a clear position. The bloc is also keen to maintain transatlantic solidarity with the US on the issue. Like funding Al-Qaeda, Israeli MP rejects Australian call for humanitarian pause. The Sydney Morning Herald. Israel has rejected Australia's call for a humanitarian pause to the conflict in Gaza, comparing it to providing funding and fuel to Al-Qaeda after the 9/11 attacks. Sharon Haskell, a leading member of the Israeli parliament, stated that Israel sees its war with Hamas as part of a global clash between democracies and dictatorships. She expressed the expectation that Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese would visit Israel soon. Haskell criticized the idea of providing supplies to Hamas, stating that no one would have given a ceasefire to the Nazis in Dresden during World War II. She also condemned the chanting of anti-Semitic slogans by pro-Palestinian supporters in Sydney and called for action against anyone displaying the Hamas flag or providing funding to the group. Haskell warned that the conflict could escalate into a wider conflict involving other countries and urged the international community to choose between supporting radical Islam or the free world and democracies. China Premier urges stepped-up trade, investment with Russia. Bloomberg. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has expressed a desire to boost trade and cooperation with Russia, stating that China is willing to align its development strategies with Russia and maintain the growth momentum of trade and investment. The close ties between the two nations have remained strong since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, with China providing diplomatic and economic support to Russia. The two nations have also displayed their closeness by vetoing a US-backed resolution at the United Nations Security Council, calling for a broader ceasefire in Gaza. Israel bombards Gaza, prepares invasion as Biden urges path to two states. Reuters. Israel continued its airstrikes on Hamas targets in Gaza as it prepared for a ground invasion while more Palestinian civilians were killed. The United Nations failed to secure plans to deliver critical humanitarian aid, and world powers struggled to find a solution. U.S. President Joe Biden said that Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live side by side in safety, dignity, and peace. Biden also stated that Hamas attacked southern Israel to prevent normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The United Nations proposed resolutions for a ceasefire, but both the US and Russia proposals failed to gain enough support. US and Australia agree to cooperate with Japan on military drones. Nikkei Asia. The US and Australia will partner with Japan to develop next-generation military drones, according to a joint statement by US President Joe Biden and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. The announcement comes as the US Air Force unveils its concept of collaborative combat aircraft, which involves unmanned aircraft operating autonomously or alongside piloted aircraft. The collaboration on unmanned aerial vehicles reflects the increasing role of drones in warfare, as demonstrated in conflicts such as Nagorno-Karabakh and Ukraine. The US and Japan have already begun collaborating on unmanned platforms, with a focus on complementing Japan's next fighter jet. What to know about Rangers Globe Life Field, Diamondbacks Chase Field for World Series? Yahoo! The Texas Rangers will host Games 1, 2, 6, and 7 of the World Series at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, while the Arizona Diamondbacks will host Games 3, 4, and 5 at Chase Field in Phoenix. Globe Life Field, which opened in 2020, has a retractable roof and a capacity of 40,300. Chase Field, which opened in 1998, also has a retractable roof and a capacity of 48,519. The stadiums have previously hosted other sporting events, concerts, and the MLB All-Star Game. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the six-dimensional world, here to bring you the latest news from around the globe. In Ukraine, the city of Kramatorsk is defying all odds as business owners reopen their doors despite the ongoing conflict. With the economy now catering to soldiers, journalists, and aid workers, the city has adapted to the war. However, the risks to business owners remain high, as demonstrated by the destruction of a pizzeria last year. It's truly inspiring to see their resilience in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, Russia seems to be turning to prisoners to feed its war machine in Ukraine. These army units, known as Storm Z, are treated as expendable forces and are often thrown into battle with little regard for their lives. This raises serious ethical concerns and highlights the desperation of the Russian Defense Ministry. On a lighter note, President Biden hosted a state dinner for the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, despite the ongoing global turmoil. The dinner was held to express a show of nuclear-powered military force to the world, but unfortunately, the performance by the B-52s was cancelled due to the crises. I guess we'll have to wait for another time to see those planes in action. Speaking of crises, satellite images show the destruction in Gaza as Israel continues its airstrikes in response to cross-border raids by Hamas. The fear of escalation is very real, and EU leaders are meeting to discuss the ongoing conflict. However, the EU's response has been criticized for being confusing and lacking a clear position. Let's hope they can find a unified approach to address this crisis. In the midst of all this, Israel has rejected Australia's call for a humanitarian pause in the conflict, comparing it to providing funding and fuel to al-Qaeda. The Israeli parliament member, Sharon Haskell, sees the war with Hamas as part of a global clash between democracies and dictatorships. It's a complex situation, but it's crucial to find a balance between supporting humanitarian efforts and ensuring the safety of the people involved. Turning our attention to China and Russia, Chinese Premier Li Qiang has expressed a desire to boost trade and cooperation with Russia. The close ties between these two nations have remained strong since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. China's support for Russia has been unwavering, and this partnership has even extended to vetoing a US-backed resolution at the United Nations Security Council regarding the Gaza conflict. Moving on, Israel continues its airstrikes in Gaza, preparing for a ground invasion, while the United Nations struggles to secure plans for critical humanitarian aid. World powers are grappling to find a solution, but President Biden has emphasized the need for Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in safety, dignity, and peace. Let's hope a peaceful resolution can be reached soon. In the realm of military technology, the US and Australia have agreed to cooperate with Japan on the development of next-generation military drones. Drones are becoming increasingly important in warfare, and this collaboration reflects that trend. With unmanned aircraft operating autonomously or alongside piloted aircraft, the future of warfare is changing before our eyes. Lastly, in the world of sports, the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks are set to host games for the World Series. Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, and Chase Field in Phoenix will be the venues for this exciting event. Both stadiums have hosted various sporting events, concerts, and even the MLB All-Star Game in the past. That's all the news for today, folks. Remember, these are just snippets of what's happening in our ever-changing world. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on these topics. So, what do you think? Share your ideas, and let's keep the discussion going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.